SB-9 was a bill that was passed actually a couple of years ago in the state legislature. And the state has been getting caught up into how can they create more housing? How can we build more housing? And there's been some pretty radical ideas to basically change how we zone property in California. And what was passed was a bill that basically said that we no longer have what we would call single-family residence lots anymore, or zoning, where you live in a neighborhood, you have single-family houses, there's only one unit on that lot. We basically changed it to say no longer in California do we have that. We now have basically R2, or at least 2 units per lot. And it makes a dramatic change to single-family neighborhoods. What SB-9 did was even more radical than that. SB-9 said not only could you go ahead and put another unit on your property like a duplex would be, or 2 units on one lot, you can actually divide that, subdivide that up, and break it off. And what's interesting is how the legislature, in fact, one of the UC Davis professors made a comment saying, they know what they're doing, they're trying to figure it out. They have no clue. Legislators have no idea or understanding of the mechanical way you actually put together a neighborhood. Like out in the street, there's sewer pipes and there's water pipes and there's utilities. And you can't just stick a house in someone's backyard and to divide it in a separate lot. What's your access look like? What is your easements on it? How do you get the sewer pipe, from the house in the back? What do you do? Go under the existing house? I mean, there's physically things that just can't happen. And so they push this ridiculous law because you're going to somehow create affordable housing. The reality of it is that no affordable housing was created. And the courts looked at that and said, well, they're not doing what they're saying they're going to do. In order to do it, you have to have a statewide issue. And so the legislature just says, oh, affordable housing is a statewide issue. Well, it's not really. It's a local issue is how you handle real estate in communities. I mean, again, it's a very complicated issue. You have whole planning departments that figure these things out. You have whole engineering departments that figure out how the streets and the curb cuts and how the water and the sewer pipes have to be. There's all sorts of technical things you have to do. And you just can't come into a neighborhood and say, oh, we're just going to go ahead and make this whole area 2 houses. So the court saw that, and 2 houses per lot. The court saw that and said, this doesn't make any sense at all. We're just not going to allow that to happen. I was just talking to someone this last week. In Los Angeles County, there's a small town called Lakewood. It was built after World War II. It was one of the first planned communities in the country after World War II. And they're houses that were built in the 40s and the 50s. Nice, clean neighborhoods, nice schools, and all that. And what are we seeing happen? People are going into those neighborhoods, tearing out the garage, which is your parking, putting 2 apartments on a property. And their whole come from was, oh, we'll be able to, lower rents. Well, the 3-bedroom house rents for $3,500, and the 2-bedroom apartments rent for $2,500. There's really no savings to anybody, but meanwhile, you took a neighborhood that had a double-car garage to park, had a driveway to park cars, and now you've added 2 more units. The lot's not wide enough to add all these extra cars. And again, as the first couple houses go in, you can do that and nobody thinks anything of it. Over a very short amount of time, you realize how much you've impacted the neighborhood, that there's no parking anymore. Because basically, you allowed people to get rid of their garages. That's one of the things they allowed. This is not SB-9, but it's part of this whole idea of, how can we make more housing available? That's number one. Number two, what they did is once you add another apartment to a property, it's no longer a single-family residence, and the value shoots up dramatically. So who buys that? It's not a homeowner. So what you've done is you've created more units, but you've gotten rid of home ownership because that buyer that was going to buy that house for, this is California, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, now has to pay $1.1 million, $1.2 million because it's a duplex lot now. And the unforeseen thing that you've done now is you push the price of housing even farther out. And we're getting to this, and we talk about this all the time, is young people in California, it's like you're going to own nothing and you're going to be happy about it. Tough luck. And that's what we can't keep on doing. there are tried and tested ways to build communities to create certain zoning for certain things. This hasn't been done by mistake. It's very detailed in how it takes to build a community. And just think about it for a second. You have a water pipe and you have sewer pipes. Sewer pipes carry a volume for sanitary. Do you think if you add 2 more apartments to every single lot, there's enough volume that it can carry? Do you think that they just went ahead and made the pipes 3 times bigger back in the 1960s to do it? Do you think that they added the left turn lanes to get out of the neighborhood that you don't have now? So this whole idea of densification is not going to cause any impacts, makes no sense whatsoever. But SB-9 was just over the top. Think of any single family neighborhood you drive down it, and people can chop up their lot and have separate ownership. Can you imagine the litigation? There's a whole body of law to run condominiums and townhomes, basically homeowners associations, all sorts of rules. But when do you paint it? How do you take care of it? How do you set up reserves? The rules amongst the different property owners, how you put your board together. You just set that up when you put 2 people on a lot without that whole body of rules. I mean, how do you solve a situation where it says, well, you're blocking your car and I can't get out of my house, where the walkway. I mean, it's just beyond ridiculousness of what they were trying to do. So I think the legislators that looked at doing it just weren't thinking. They're all caught up on this thing to create more housing, and they're not really going to create more housing. And then on top of it, they're going to destroy a neighborhood to do it. But understand, there's a lot of legislators in Los Angeles County and San Francisco, especially San Francisco. They look down on people that are in single-family houses. They think they're just ridiculous. That's just total waste. Again, some of these professors that have been reading about, they're all talking about when are people going to understand that they're going to have to give up their single-family neighborhoods? Why? I mean, you bought there. You wanted a certain standard of what you had. This isn't rich people. These are normal, everyday working people. Lakewood, all the employees came out of McDonnell Douglas. Those were back when we had airplane manufacturing here in Southern California. We don't have that anymore. But those people all worked at the plant there, and they all bought their first homes there. And to go ahead again and think you're somehow going to upturn all of that and everything's going to be okay makes no sense whatsoever. We've been doing affordable housing for thousands of years, okay? Because every house was affordable, somebody was in it. Let me back up and kind of explain it. First off, I've been involved in affordable housing for a long time. I was the chairman of the Housing Commission for the County of Orange for years. I worked with nonprofits to get housing, get people off the streets, to do the best that we can. But we have to understand that it makes no sense whatsoever. Listen to this clearly. It makes no sense whatsoever to go ahead and build brand new houses to try to make them affordable. We all have lived in affordable housing. They were 20, 30, 40, and 50-year-old houses. They cost less. And somehow this concept, you're going to build an affordable house. The 2x4s aren't any cheaper. The wood's, not cheaper. The drywall's not cheaper. The concrete's not cheaper. The standards for the apartment or whatever you're putting affordable is the same as a brand new property. There's no depreciation on it. And somehow we've got legislators that think we're going to go build affordable housing. The whole concept of building something brand new doesn't work. Now, can we get more affordable housing? Yes, you build more units. And to that, these people said, let's take all these R1 neighborhoods and add more units to them. I think that's wrong because they weren't zoned that way. But you can build apartment structures, and it doesn't matter if they're for medium, for high, for low. It doesn't matter. What matters is you built more roofs. Because wherever somebody moves into a place, they've moved out of a place. And if they're moving up, they move into a new place, their older place is available. And that's less rent and less cost than the new place. And if it's not that, somebody else moves up. So in the end, to get affordable housing, you just need more roofs. One of the things is that we look at affordable housing and the state tells all the communities to come up with your affordable housing. They don't say where to go. Now, how about if we needed a statewide initiative for affordable housing? Why don't you put affordable housing where there's more land. Okay, instead, they say, oh, you know what? We need affordable housing in Santa Monica. We need affordable housing in Huntington Beach. We need affordable housing in Manhattan Beach. We need affordable housing in Newport Beach. Really? The most expensive real estate in the world at the beach. We're going to get people housing to get at the beach. And then how do they pick who moves into that housing? Who do you have to know? Because basically, whenever they have a limit on what the rents can be, you're subsidizing somebody, right? And basically, it's like a lottery ticket. It's like, well, I got to move in. So the thing you have to learn about quote-unquote affordable housing is there's no such thing as affordable housing, like I said earlier. The cost of the wood, the 2x4s, the concrete, everything's the same as in a regular apartment or a regular house. There's nothing affordable about it. It's a subsidized house. It's always subsidized by somebody. Whether the city's going to do it out of people's taxes, or if a developer wants to go build a building and they force them to build lower priced ones, again, they're not lower priced, they're just charging less for it, then the people in the rest of the apartment building or townhouse project have to make up the difference. So again, to think you're going to solve this problem by building brand new, quote unquote affordable or subsidized units, you can't get them from here. There's not enough money on the planet Earth to get housing for everybody who wants it if they aren't going to work towards paying for it themselves some way. Think about that. We just can't get everybody off the street and say, hey, here's a house. Because what have we found out? That, especially with people who have the drug and alcohol problems, and we look at the homeless on our streets, are the homeless on our streets a housing problem? No, they're not a housing problem. They're usually a drug or an alcohol or mental illness problem. And to think we're going to somehow put them into some small apartment, the difference there, the sad thing that happens there, instead of, dying on the street, they die in their apartment because of the drug problem or the mental health issue problem they have. So again, this problem is not going to get solved if we come up with these ideas, especially the craziness when they went to SB-9. I was shocked that the courts went against it. It was so obvious to everybody, but most of the decisions coming for the courts against the state's, power over these cities and telling them what they have to do, which 20 years ago the courts would have never passed, they've been passing. This is the first time the state has said, enough's enough. You're not going to go start subdividing up lots in people's neighborhoods and make them, separate ownership. So I said this before, and I got beat up for it when I said it when I was on the city council in Costa Mesa. I said, if you cannot afford to live in an area where your kids can have a decent house and decent schools, you should look to an area that matches up with how much money you make and where you can live, so you can have that. And the come from was, oh, get out of our town, we don't want you. That's not the point at all. What I said, what we've been doing, like I said before, for hundreds of years. You went to where you could afford. If you need to move out of state to a place that you can get a lot more housing, I do a lot of development in other states. And normal, everyday young couples, 23, 24 years old, buy houses for $350,000, $400,000, some new. They put 3% down. They move in. They have a nice life. Is it at the beach in Southern California? No. But it's in the mountains of Colorado. It's in Idaho. It's in Texas. It's in Nashville. It's in Georgia. There's a lot of places you can have it. And so the idea that you're just going to, you can't move. You're not a tree. You can move. And so that's what people have to look at, a bigger picture, think of where do I want to be to get affordable housing. The responsibility for affordable housing should be your responsibility, not the government's responsibility. If the government stops units from being built, then it is a problem. But as long as they allow in areas that have open areas, like in Southern California, the Inland Empire, the Central Valley up in Northern California, as long as they quit stopping projects from getting approved, which they've done for years with the environmental issues, that's the most government should do. Other than that, you yourself should decide, where can I afford to live? Who pays me enough money that I can live here and have a good family for my family? And it's your responsibility. And you do that, you're going to do a lot better.
If you haven't checked out CaliforniaInsider.com, we highly recommend you do that now because we're going to have a lot of news and videos there. And on top of what we have there right now, we're building a really big platform to cover what's happening in California so you can be informed. We're going to have more shows, more videos from all aspects of life in California. Go to CaliforniaInsider.com and we'll see you there.